All right, sorry about that delay. We figured it out. Usually they're here with me to do that. All right, we're good to go.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. All right, so we're going to call the meeting.
All right, sorry about that delay. We figured it out. Usually they're here with.
All set? Okay, so I think we've got our technology working at this point. We're going to call the meeting to order at 8:02 p.m. Before we get started, I'd like to read our remote participation statement. Consistent with the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, MGL Chapter 30A, S20, and Regulation 940, CMR 29.10, which allows for remote participation in certain circumstances under the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law regulations. The Mendon-Upton Regional School Committee will be conducting this meeting with remote participation. Any and all votes will be conducted by roll call. So want to get started tonight with an approval of tonight's agenda.
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
John Nicholson, aye.
Bill DeZutter, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye. Okay, tonight's agenda has been approved. Our only item for consideration tonight is a review of our current face coverings policy, and specifically how it relates to our pre-K programs. Do you have the policy here to review? If we need to read through that, does anybody feel like we need to read through the whole thing, or no? I think we've been through this several times recently. Looking for our statement that looks specifically at pre-K. At this point, I want to open for discussion amongst the committee members as to whether or not we would like to amend the current policy to remove the statements regarding the pre-K program. And once the committee has had a chance to have our discussion, we'll open up to public comment and hold our motion and decision until after the public comment period. Unless there are concerns with that procedure, I will open it up to conversation for the committee.
I mean, do we want to have a review of the information that's been presented to us from the various sources first?
We can absolutely do that. This is something that we want to share. I know Marina put together a really nice background information piece for us, complete with updated pre-K parent survey results. I think that we have all received many emails from both sides of this issue. I know that we've all done our own research and have some feelings and thoughts that we're bringing to the conversation today. So if we want, we can start with sort of a review of local data. I think that would probably be a good idea, as well as the pre-K results. And Maureen, do you want to share some of that information that you've gathered, or I can review the information that you've organized for us?
Well, why don't I review a couple of the data pieces, and then if you want to, talk about anything else that you've read through related to guidelines and changes. I know I've shared it with everyone. So just in regard to, as you know, we're always tracking the COVID data weekly. And so in the weekly case data, the good news, we only had one positive case. That's one of the lowest that we've had in this past week in all of the district. And so when we think of the district and our numbers, we talked about enrollment last night, about 2,100 students, but then you include all of our staff that are within the schools as well. So it's closer to 2,400 to 2,500 100 as well. So to have one case, that's pretty low. But if you go back to the weekly case data, I know when we originally had this conversation, some concerns we had at the time was if we would have a surge after the break, you know, what would the numbers continue to go down, even though they predicted they would. And we've seen that they've continued to trend downward and be at the lower levels. So related to that, you know, I can kind of speak just in general in the last week about, I've talked about the mask flexible environment, and, you know, we've shared out a few times the FAQs with families and talked about it at a couple of the meetings, but it's really going well across all of the buildings. I know particularly we're talking about at the elementary level. We have a number of students in classes who are still wearing masks, a number of students that aren't. They're just the students from the student perspective, you know, pretty comfortable wearing it or not wearing it based off of what the expectations are with their families and coming in. And so that's been going well. We have some staff that are wearing it, some that aren't, but it's really, like, we haven't had any issues in the buildings too. So it's been a nice transition. I know that I shared out, I won't dive deep into it, but I shared out some of the CDC, just the Worcester County transmission levels at low transmission, and they're going to a guidance change kind of related to community level of transmission. So we're in that low transmission area. I know that I shared out information about a week ago from Trish Parent, just related to Upton data that she kind of shared with us, that we only had a couple cases in Upton about a week ago. We talked a while back about the CDC transportation guidance change. And one thing that we knew was coming, but wasn't there when we met, and it was about a month ago when we met originally on, I think that was the 14th, right? That was our Valentine's Day celebration of talking about masks, but we have the Department of Early Education and Care. So that's some information I shared with you as well. We knew they were coming out with guidelines and they just hadn't come out yet, but they basically, you know, said that as always, any individual wishes to continue to mask, including those who face higher risk, you know, should be supported in that choice, which is, you know, how we've been doing it in all of our other classrooms. If I jump to the mask survey with parents, I know I shared all that data with you, but I'll read off the numbers, and I certainly can share my screen if you want to see it, but basically it's a little small here. So is the scale of 1 to 5 related to comfortability with the removal of the mask requirement in pre-K programs and moving to the mask flexible? So we had 33 individuals, so 63.5% gave feedback on that 5, like, yep, I'm really comfortable. 7, which was 13.5%, were the 4. In the middle, we had 2 people who fell in that middle. And then if you combine the 1 and the 2s, for people who weren't comfortable, it looks like that's about 18%. So we had 6 that were 1s and 4 that were 2s. And we did, if anyone's watching and kind of wondering why we did another survey, when we did that original survey, just to explain why, when we did the original survey, we did not ask, we didn't delineate based off, we just did buildings, we didn't do grade levels. And so because the pre-K masking had been put in at that initial meeting, we wanted to make sure we were getting specific data by school and at that level. And I also, you know, did touch base with the teachers at the pre-K too, just to kind of touch base about if there was any possibility of a transition at some point. And they, you know, felt comfortable either way of whatever, you know, the committee decided. So they, you know, felt like things were going fine, but would be fine. I also asked Leslie just to take a look at pre-K numbers. And I know there had been conversations related to vaccinations and if, you know, how many would be turning 5. And one, there were some pre-Ks where no one would be turning 5 because it was the younger grades, but there'd only be a few, and I list them out. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but if that's something, you have that data to take a look at there. So if there's something I missed, feel free to ask and I can kind of dive back into it. But I know some of you have looked at other areas of research too, but that's some of our school data.
Maureen, what percentage of the pre-K parents responded to the survey?
That's a good question. Can I get back to you on that and
Yeah.
see, so I can get how many and then how many it is in total, like what that percentage is? Because we didn't track to, how many parents too, like we have number of students. So let me see if I can get that.
Thanks.
Overall, I think it looked like we had 52 responses, which is, I would say, a large amount based
Okay.
off of our students.
Okay. We've also had the changes in the transportation, the CDC transportation guidance, I think, since we made the decision about the pre-K masking, the decisions from the Department of Early Education and Care, which I think we already talked about. So other folks on the screen, thoughts, discussion?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think with the additional guidance from the CDC and the Department of Early Education since we last met, and the continuing decline in cases, that it makes sense to bring pre-K into alignment with the rest of the grades, and to amend the policy to remove that line. I would like to discuss what might trigger a return to mask, because I certainly have some concerns about cases rising in Europe. And, historically, they've been a few weeks ahead of us. So I want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. And, I think there were a couple of studies this week, one of which was from pediatrics about universal masking in schools, and it really does significantly decrease the rate of secondary infection. So, so I think it's important to kind of just keep in mind that there may be situations that warrant a return to needing to wear masks, or at least, obviously we're still strongly advising anyone who's unvaccinated or who has somebody who's immunocompromised at home to continue to wear masks. But yeah, I think at this point, I would support switching to making pre-K mask flexible as well.
Yeah. I read that study in pediatrics as well, Vicki, and I would say that one of the organizations that I've gone to is the American Academy of Pediatrics as we go through all of this. And that's been one of my concerns all along, is that they're continuing to recommend K through 12 masking. But even if you read through their research study talking about how the masks do significantly impact the secondary transitions, but even the numbers of secondary transitions looked pretty low in some of their recent studies, I think. So, it's sort of that cost benefit piece that we need to talk about too. And, it's nice to hear about the excitement of the kids and the staff and everybody to finally see each other's faces and to have those kinds of interactions. And, we want to protect students in the way that the medical community is telling us to protect them. But in when that's held up against low numbers of local transmissions and COVID positive cases, it seems to make sense that we make that move. But I do agree with you that having that conversation about what triggers a move back would be something that would make me feel better about taking this step.
So Carrie, I've actually been following them as well. So American Academy of Pediatrics, they've just this past period of time, it's not clear, but they've actually come into alignment with the CDC now. They're saying that the mask flexible guidance is okay for kids. So it seems to me that the whole society is moving toward relaxing the restrictions, probably to take advantage of this period of time if it ends up being a short period of time. So I think it's probably a good decision to try to relax the mandates as far as I'm concerned, and try to go mask optional for the entire student population. That's my feeling. If the American Academy of Pediatrics, which has been very conservative on this point, is now being mask flexible, then I think that's a good decision as well.
Okay. Is there further conversation that we want to have as a committee before opening it up for public comment?
So I guess I'll go back to what Vicky said, just real quick. I guess the question I would ask to Maureen is, and when will we see maybe a proposal back in terms of what are the numbers or what are the metrics we're looking at to return, or that might make us reconsider a masking policy, or might allow us to mask at various different building levels?
I don't know if you'd have a set metric that's out there. There isn't one that's out there, but one thing that we'd look at, one is that CDC, since they're going with the group transmission levels, whether or not you're low, moderate, or high, they give specific guidance of how the communities, and when you're in a community, those adjustments. The biggest piece is if we start to see any trends, and this is the same throughout the whole pandemic, at a grade level that we may be noticing something, or in a building, we are reporting weekly, and then we reach out to, our nurses every day are tracking that data. We reach out to the local board of health for guidance, and we reach out to the COVID hotline at DESE, which walks schools through that. So until they come, we get an external metric that is different from CDC. I would say we would just continue that process that we're in, right now, which is all of the schools that we're in right now.
Maureen, do any of the other mitigation factors that we're using, like the social distancing, and particularly during meal times and snack times, are any of those things looking different in the pre-K program than for other students? Like, is there an extra layer that's happening for the little ones besides just to give a feel for what their environment might look like once the masks go optional?
Well, let me think. So when it comes to lunchtime or snack time, they've been following the same, rules and protocols. So they take off their masks, they are distanced, they're eating. It's a short amount of time for the snack time. And then the way the lunches go, I'm trying to think, I don't know if I've seen, I hate to say that I don't know if I've witnessed like a pre-K lunch. I guess it's maybe in the classroom, like in the cafeteria, they're all still distanced. So when I go in, I do see them eating in the pre-K. Yeah, I guess it's halftime, so they don't have really lunch. So that's why. So they just have just the snacks. So they're at their tables, they're separated, they wash their hands, they have all these protocols that they've been doing the same all along. So that stays the same. And we had sustained at the elementary level through the rest of this year, just in general for, all the elementary parents that are here watching, we have the same system in our cafeterias for regular lunch, but pre-K, snack time's the same as it has been with all the protocols already. I don't know if that answers your question, but we're keeping all of those things in place as we have.
Right, no, that does. It's been a long time since I've seen a pre-K program, so I'm just trying to visualize what all of that.
The other thing I could
like.
say too, just to imagine the room, there aren't a lot of students in the room. It's a really large space compared to some of the other classrooms. And so you have, the students are really kind of spread out anyways in that space. So there's a ton of room for in different pockets and doing different activities anytime I go in there, but it isn't, they have a lot of spacing. They're not close together, and that would stay the same.
Okay. All right, committee, any other questions?
If I could, I'm going to because just off the top of my head, I'm starting to think about what Vicky brought up, and I think it's important to understand, if we look at the data we've got within the district for when the Omicron wave hit us, I mean, I think that shows a very good example of, what happens after a break and what happens when we get hammered by the virus. So, right after the Christmas holiday and break, we got slammed with 31 new cases in one school, and I can't even scroll here. It's in Clough, 25 cases in Memorial, Misco and Nipmuc had Misco had roughly the same number, and then Nipmuc had 56 cases. I mean, that's more than we'd ever seen in the pandemic. So you can imagine why you'd be a little gun shy if you have a break like February break coming up, to pull the masks off on the 28th seems a little irresponsible, given that is our history of our school district. So I think if we saw something like that, an uptick like that, or an uptick that's even half as extreme as that, I think that would be cause to consider the mask mandate. So I would say if there's even within one school, if there's a significant uptick in case counts, then we have to consider what we're going to do with masks. And I think that's where we should leave it. That's just my opinion, but I thought I'd throw that out there. I hope that helps, Vicky.
I think it's just a matter of putting a clear communication out there. I mean, I agree with your point. I think, Maureen, that's what you said before as well. If you look at CDC guidance, it's driven based on positivity rate in the area. It's driven on hospitalizations. It's a couple of different factors that play into it. So I think, in order to get to the high, those things have to trend up in that direction, kind of like Sean, what you just said. So, but I think it's important just to put a clear communication out there so that people at least are aware of it and, and understand that we're still monitoring it quite closely.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Phil. Thanks.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to open up for public comment. Before we start inviting folks in to speak, I'd like to remind people of our public comment policy, which is when you're invited in to speak, please state your name and your address. Since we are on Zoom, please make sure that your name is reflected on your Zoom login. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, limited to speaking one time during the meeting. And we're going to allow 15 minutes for this public comment period. So at that point, we'll open up for public comment.
Okay. So Jim Forkey has his hand raised, so I'm going to click on allow to talk and see if that works. Let's see.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic.
Hi, Jim, yes.
Yeah, so my first question is, I don't know if I joined late, but I didn't actually hear a motion made. Is there currently a motion on the table?
No, we opened up for discussion and public comment. We're holding our motion and decision making until after we've had the opportunities for the committee to share some thoughts and the community.
Okay, and so the discussion is around unmasking in pre-K. Sorry, my name is Jim Forkey. I've got two 4-year-olds in a Memorial address as 7 Nathaniel Way. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say yes. So what's up for discussion is removing the statement in the current masking policy that specifically states that pre-K students will be required to wear masks.
Got it. I just wanted to comment on Sean. I didn't see anything out of AAP that said they recommend unmasking. I just checked their website. I could be looking in the wrong place. I didn't see anything to that effect, but I could just not be looking in the right place.
Yeah, incredibly difficult to see. I don't blame you, Jim.
That being said, the numbers are very low. I think I support unmasking at this point. My advice would be to also come up with some remasking, right? You guys all have full-time jobs. So something that you're not here saying, okay, oh, we have to remask 3 weeks from now or whatever, if number comes up. So come up with a policy. My advice is to come up with a policy that defines when schools should remask. I understand there's no guidance on it, and I understand that puts you in a very tough position. At the same time, I think even something is better than nothing, right? You can always revisit it down the road if you have to, but something is better than nothing. And I think it gives people some comfort that you guys are looking out for the younger kids. And as Vicky pointed out, numbers are going up in Europe, and they have been a precursor, so it's something to keep an eye on. Hopefully they go down here, but there's no guarantee. So that would be my advice. I think I'm for unmasking currently, but that could change very quickly. So.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate your comment.
I don't see any other hands raised right now.
Folks, I'm sorry. I think I froze for a second.
Yeah, there are no other hands raised right now. Oh, there is. Wait, one sec. Christine, here we go.
Hi, Christine.
Hi, can you guys see me?
I can't. I don't know if others can, but
I
that's
don't
fine.
see-
Is what we can hear you.
Yeah, I don't see myself, but in any event, I'm glad you guys it's asking me to join as a panelist. Is that what I do, or do I just hit stay as an attendee?
If you join as a panelist, I'm still learning how to manage this, then we can see you. So if you click yes, you'll be able to put your video on to talk.
All right, I think you can hear me, but for some reason I can't turn my camera on, so I apologize.
Oh, good. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks.
So I'm glad to hear. I just want to say I'm really glad to hear that I don't have little kids anymore. I have all of my kids are in high school now. I only have one at Nipmuc. The other two are across the street at BVT. But I just want to say that I know you guys are worried about numbers going up in the future, but we can't keep going back and forth, mask to no mask to mask to no mask, mask to no mask. I mean, we have to stop living in fear, and we need to start living to learn to live with having COVID. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be with us. And I think to keep going back and forth, I think is not going to get anyone anywhere. That's just kind of really how I feel. Every variant, I think parents are going to be like, oh my God, are we going to have to mask again? Or are kids not going to have to mask again? I can tell you my one kid who is at Nipmuc was never so happy to get rid of that mask, and doesn't ever want to put it on again. Suicide rates are up, mental health rates are up. And I'm talking from a high school level. I know with little kids, there's, speech delays, and they're missing social cues. And, I just feel like masking again is just not the way to go. I think we need to let parents make their own decisions for their children. You want a mask? Great. I think it's great if you want a mask. If you don't, great. But that's how I feel. I worry that we're going to, every time there's a new sniffle or there's a new variant, we're going to keep going back and forth. And I think that's going to do more damage to our kids. So that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate you taking the time.
We have Bridget had raised her hand.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, I just wanted to echo what Christine just said. I thought she said it eloquently, very well. I think bottom line is this should always be left to the parents. You know, if you want to mask, you can mask. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So you always, always, always have the option to mask, period. And I couldn't have said it any better than Christine. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. Appreciate it.
I don't see any new hands raised.
Okay. All right, well, seeing no additional hands, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section of our agenda and come back to the school committee members. And after having had the benefit of discussion and public comment, see if we want to take any motions to amend our current face masking policy.
I will make a motion to amend policy EBCFA, face coverings policy, to remove the second bullet point that reads, a face covering that covers the nose and mouth is required to be worn by students in pre-K in school buildings, even when social distancing is observed, other than when eating or drinking. Masks are not required when outside.
Second.
Any further discussion? Then roll call vote, please.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Phil Desutter, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye. And the motion passes to amend the current face covering policy to remove the second bullet point. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda for this evening, and we can take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Phil Desutter, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye. And we are adjourned at 8:34.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, Maureen, for being our tech guru.